Good afternoon. I just want to give a quick note. I saw a couple of AI requests to record the meeting. I denied the request. We're going to record the meeting and it'll be available through our website. And so we're not going to allow anyone to record. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Sandy.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to Deal 10's first info session. We will host another info session on Wednesday, September 3rd. Feel free, we will promote that. Feel free to share that with your network. That info session will be held in the evening starting at 5 o'clock, and it will also be recorded. Next slide, please, Sharnice. We began our fellowship deal events as well as our fellowship sessions with the land and ancestor acknowledgement. So I'm going to read the land and ancestor acknowledgement that we have borrowed from Healing by Choice Detroit. We began by acknowledging and uplifting the history and present of Detroit as Anishinaabe, the people of the three fires, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. Detroit is the largest majority Black city in the nation, with a long legacy of African diasporic global contributions, which was once the last stop on the Underground Railroad, known by its code name Midnight. Detroit is also neighbor to the U.S. city with the largest concentration of Arab Americans, a border city with historic and growing Latinx communities, and a legacy of Asian American communities and movements. We acknowledge this land, its history, and all the beings seen and unseen, known and unknown as we step into our work on this land, most of us as uninvited guests. We offer this work in the spirit of reparation, devoting ourselves to justice as we strive to uplift the legacy of this land. And this is our agenda for the afternoon. This is what we'll be talking about. We'll start with an introduction of the team, also a really quick overview of the history of the Damon J. Keefe Center for Civil Rights and the Detroit Equity Action Lab. We will share our definition of racial equity and what it means to us. You will hear about the fellowship and our curriculum. You will also get to hear from two recent fellows from our a.k.a. cohort, and you'll also learn who leads the fellowship. We'll close with answering some frequently asked questions, and then we'll wrap up with the next steps, what our process is in the timeline. And of course, we'll hold space and time for you all to ask questions that we may not have answered. My name is Sandy Connor, and I am the director of the Detroit Equity Action Lab. And this is our team. You will hear from Rihanna Chester Bay, our fellowship program manager, Aisha Jamali, our communications and marketing specialist, Sharnice Tate, our program engagement coordinator, and Peter Hammer, the Damon J. Keefe Center for Civil Rights faculty director. Our team is rounded out with a design team who are all fellow alum of our fellowship program, starting with Namira Islam Anani, a Deal 3 alum, Shane Bernardo, a Deal 2 alum, Maya Holmes from Deal 6, and Trinity Watson from Deal 7. Later this afternoon, you'll hear from two Deal 8 fellows, Jermaine Carey and Janae Wilson, and they'll introduce themselves before they speak. Peter?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Hammer. I'm the faculty director of the Damon J. Keefe Center for Civil Rights. The DEAL program is probably the most important part of the work that we've done at the center. 10 years to celebrate is very exciting, and being part of DEAL 10 would be wonderful. At the center, we often talk about our work as consisting of knowledge, network, and narratives. Knowledge, things we have done is create a understanding of the way that spatial structural racism operates in Detroit and creates inequality. The DEAL is the most important part of the network. So you don't want to think of yourself in isolation. Think of yourself as joining a really large and important network of people who are fighting structural racism. We will also be talking, if you are in the fellowship, about the power of narrative and the need to have new narratives in order to support new sets of institutions and structures. This is our namesake, the Honorable Damon J. Keith. He served on the federal bench for 52 years, which is just really astonishing. He hired more women and clerks of color than any other judge in history. He had a number of landmark cases, and we really view the work at the Keith Center is trying to live up to the life and legacy of Judge Keith. Also want to give an important shout out to Mama Lila Cabell. Mama Lila was a huge influence in my life and mentor in helping to teach me how to do racial equity work in Detroit. And she was not shy about giving advice when she thought you needed to learn a lesson. But she also played a very important part of the deal. She began with Deal 1 in the very beginning. She helped us design the curriculum, and she continued that work until she sadly passed. But we'll talk more about ancestors. We think it's important to honor the people that came before us, the people on whose shoulders we stand, and Mama Lila is one of those giants. So thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Aisha Jamali, Deal's Marketing and Communications Specialist. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how Deal defines racial equity. So this is our definition. I'll read it out and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Racial equity centers the humanity and dignity of all people, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color. It begins with acknowledging those historically and systemically harmed by a racial hierarchy that perpetuates white supremacy and anti-Blackness. It demands that our communities have the power to replace racist policies, institutions, and culture with a collective commitment toward co-liberation. So we determined this definition collectively as a team to reflect our approach, the approach to racial equity that Deal follows via its curriculum. So first, we start our definition by naming the values that root us in our work, specifically the humanity and dignity of all people, but especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And then we name what we define as the problem, a racial hierarchy that perpetuates white supremacy and anti-Blackness. And then finally, in the definition, we identify what we see as the solution, a collective commitment toward co-liberation. For some added context to this definition, these are a few points that we have included to address some of the common questions and comments that may come up when using and sharing this definition. So number one, race is a construct, but its impact is real. We can both hate racism, but also feel connected to and find belonging with our racial identity. Number two, BIPOC is a political identity. It is not intended to flatten, but rather to name the group's collective power and shared experiences under white supremacy. So in the term BIPOC, Black and Indigenous people are particularly highlighted within the broader POC group because they have a unique history and experience in the US that needs to be acknowledged. Number three, racial equity can obviously be defined in many ways. This is Deal's specific focus on racial equity, like I said before, rooted in our curriculum, and it is what grounds us in our work. And there is a resource that we have with all of these slides and the definition as a PDF on our website. I'll send a link in the chat for that later if you're interested in studying it more and using it in your own spaces. And this is a statement from Shane Bernardo, a fellowship facilitator for the cohorts and also an alum of Deal 2. He's talking about how Deal is so, like Deal's curriculum is rooted in the personal to the structural. He says to address things like structural racism and other systems of oppression, we have to look at our own personal journeys around healing because we can only go as deep as we are willing to go ourselves. It strikes a balance between the collective work that we're doing together and the personal work that we need to do around healing. And you'll hear more about how DEAL focuses on the personal to the structural later in the presentation.
So I'm Rihanna Chester Bay. I'm the fellowship manager. I'm going to be talking really about the fellowship. So to start DEAL, our purpose, our mission statement is that we develop leaders working to end structural racism in Detroit. We are co-creating a multiracial and multigenerational network of racial equity leaders. And our goal, the impact that we intend to have, is equipping leaders with the tools to disrupt racism and create equitable alternatives together. So how we work, this is the Racial Equity Fellowship. Our Racial Equity Fellowship is a year-long program for emerging and experienced leaders with a deep commitment to racial equity. We value all forms, all types of equity work, the seen and unseen work, and racial equity leadership, whether it's from the front, back, or middle. Our fellows are highly committed. We have sessions every month that are in person in Detroit and occasionally online. So these are our fellowship learning objectives. So the goal in the fellowship is to build a structural racism analysis, deepen your understanding of structural racism in Detroit and Detroit's history, to understand your own racialized identity, to explore multiracial coalitions and how white supremacy culture shows up for all racial groups, and then finally to move from allyship to co-liberation. And so to go deeper into our sessions and what we work on building a shared understanding. We build a shared understanding of racial equity from a personal to structural lens. We'll talk about that more. Our fellows connect to anti-racism movement ancestors and better understand structural racism and how it plays out in Detroit. We also develop the skills and tools needed to disrupt racism and create equitable alternatives. Our fellows are experts of their own experience, and you all are also experts of your own experience. Our role is to provide the resources to deepen their understanding and fortify their work. And lastly, we co-create space to deepen relationships within a multiracial and multigenerational network of racial equity leaders. Challenging racism is hard, it's painful work, and we need to have space to support each other and to celebrate our successes. And so that is why we focus on relationships. So just to see our curriculum arc, this is our curriculum arc. And again, our program focuses on racial equity from a personal to structural lens. We recognize that co-liberation towards racial equity is as much about our personal journeys as it is about addressing oppressive systems. So we start with understanding. We encourage our fellows to research and connect to liberation ancestors through the first part of the curriculum arc, and we'll go deeper into the arc and what's covered. And then we move into understanding systems and how the political impacts the personal in the second part of our curriculum arc, which is all about the systems and white supremacist culture. And then we land on understanding how our co-liberation is intertwined and how we use our gifts to create change where we are. All right, so the first part of the curriculum arc is politicized and racialized identity, our personal and ancestral connection to liberation. During the first part of the curriculum arc, we encourage our fellows to find and connect to anti-racism movement ancestors. The purpose is to shift fellows' focus from an external perspective to an internal perspective, making the personal connections either from their own lineage or their racial background. This is the personal and ancestral connection to liberation work. It's about understanding how our identities came to be and what the historical and political factors are that have impacted and shaped our identities. All right, so the second part of the curriculum arc is where we focus on white supremacist culture, structural racism and anti-Black racism, understanding and analysis of the structure. So this is where we examine the personal and move into understanding. After we examine the personal, this is where we move into understanding the systems and how the systems impact the personal, how the political impacts the personal. So the things that you see listed under each curriculum arc are some of the tools and activities that we do under these arcs. So under this arc, we look at how white supremacy and anti-Blackness shows up in Detroit and how that has impacted our personal lineage. This is also where we start to dig into the tools needed to analyze structural racism by looking at the systems rather than just the interpersonal. And so fellows leave with a better understanding of structural racism, how it plays out in Detroit, and how it has impacted them. Next slide. And so the third part of the curriculum where we land is co-liberation and the social change ecosystem, our gifts and roles in creating change. So we land on how our co-liberation is intertwined and how we use our gifts where we are in order to impact change. And so again, these are some of the things that we use under this part of the curriculum, but we are exploring in this part of the curriculum the ecosystem of social change. So that helps us to shift away from the misunderstanding that the only way to impact change is through direct action. It honors all of our roles and gifts in liberation work and how we need all of our roles in order to create an equitable Detroit. Next slide. So the fellowship so far has had 9 cohorts, and we've had over 200 fellows. Our fellowship is multiracial and multigenerational. We strive to reflect the diversity of Detroit. Our youngest fellow was 18 and our oldest fellow was 81. We are located within a university. However, we are not focused on college students. We have fellows who are working or volunteering for groups and organizations, or as individuals, and fellows come from many areas of expertise, whether it's arts and media, community development, education, environment, food security, health care, housing, or more. So next slide. So to end, this is really the impact that we see to have. We are shifting our fellows' baseline understanding of racial equity and supporting their journey towards co-liberation. Our fellows discover more about themselves, Detroit, and the deep history of structural racism while reflecting on leadership and the power that comes from close collaboration. So that is our impact. And this is just a quote from Deal 6 alumni, Juan Carlos DeWicki Perez. He says that Deal taught me to unlearn and relearn. It taught me that I have a purpose in liberation. It taught me to understand what white supremacy is, not as a buzzword, but as a tool and a system, and how it is spread across borders. So that's just a little bit about the impact that the curriculum has had. And so now I'm going to actually turn it over to our alum to talk briefly about their experience in the fellowship. We have Janae Wilson and Jermaine Carey.
I can go first.
That works.
Okay. And I'm joining from my phone because my computer is having tech challenges. But I am Janae Wilson. I am a part of Deal 8 or a Deal 8 alum. I was born and I like to say nurtured on the east side of Detroit. So I spent my entire life here in Detroit and completed the Deal Fellowship last year.
You want to say a little bit about your experience in the fellowship?
Yes, sorry, I didn't know if we wanted Jermaine to go to first. But I can share a little bit more, yes, about my experience in the fellowship. I had heard about the fellowship from a couple of previous alum. So folks from Deal 5, 6, and 7 all were like, you need to do this program. And they were right. It was deeply transformational. I think a big part of the transformation is within yourself, but also it helps when you're building relationships, especially coalition building style relationships, going not to give certain things away, but a big part of it is like building relationships within your own group, if that makes sense, but also going across to other groups and understanding their side or presenting to them. And so I think that was really impactful for me and transformational in terms of growing up here. You get exposed to a lot of people, but you don't always get to talk to a lot of those people, especially on the east side. Most people look like me. And so just having that experience was very helpful. It helped me not only in my professional career, but also like as a person, as an individual. And I would like to say that my people, my DO8 was amazing. They were great, in fact. And so the relationships and the friendships was really impactful for me.
Thank you, Jermaine. Jermaine, would you like to speak to your experience?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I am Jermaine Carey. I am also a Deal 8 alum. I can say that I didn't know what to expect when I went in there. I think I heard about it from like some of my cohorts at my previous employment, but I never really dug into it. I think I met a Sunday at on a conference or something, and I met her and she told me about it, and I looked more into it. So she invited me to come in. What can I say? I it was sorry, I got my kids here. Can you so I'm in the background, they be some haters. I can say that I look at it, didn't know what to expect, but what I did get out of it was the fact that, again, how organically our team built amongst one another. Like it was like no type of fakeness. It was like real genuine relationships, real genuine connections. You never understand, you never know somebody until you get to know somebody. And what we did from what we titled this thing called soul work, we got to know one another immensely. And by doing that, we allowed ourselves to grow, expand our range of empathy towards one another. And particularly, what I used that as opportunity to arrange my empathy toward people in general, specifically the understanding of the history of the Detroit. And some people don't know that history, and I know I learned a lot more with this. And I also understand, like, now with Deal, that by Detroit being so historically Black, so ethnically Black, and so Black to the blackity of Blackness, that we don't understand sometimes the range of how structural racism and systematic racism work in the city in general, because we so Black. So we don't understand that it is a lot of times Detroit is the epicenter of how structural racism get organized. Like we are the prime. Sometimes we like the prime examples of how to how to build certain systems to oppress the people. And a lot of times, what I learned through Deal is how to expand on explaining that to our people, um, and also just being available genuinely, like my heart being available to the people. That's what I learned as far as development of my leadership skills, and just, again, being more available to all of our people, particularly those that occupied that space.
Thank you both. Thank you, Jermaine. Thank you for sharing your experience. we'll
Good
pass it
afternoon, everyone. I'm Sharnice Tate. I'm Deal's Program Engagement Coordinator. Easy for me to say today, as you can see. We are nearing the end of our fellowship info session here. However, we do want to give you an opportunity to get just a little bit more information and ask any questions that you may have. There are some things that do come up that could possibly be on your mind, and we will attempt to answer those things. And then if you have any questions after, we will make space for that. Typically, folks, right off the bat want to know who can apply for the fellowship. And we welcome emerging and experienced racial equity leaders, those who are working or volunteering for groups or organizations, or even just as an individual, if you are interested. We do ask that your work or your volunteerism impact the city of Detroit, and those who either work in the city, live in the city, or if you live in the Metro Detroit area, but your work impacts the city, you are welcome to apply. And as it was stated earlier, those who are 18 and older are, can apply to the fellowship. Who's a good fit? Those folks who do have a deep personal commitment to racial equity. Be a critical thinker, be respectful and open to different perspectives, actively challenge the status quo or any dominant narratives. Believe that you can positively influence racial equity in Detroit. And the understanding of racial equity and the desire to join a network and to work collaboratively and be willing to sit in discomfort. What are the fellowship commitments? We ask you to be present, engage in reflection, self-assessment, and have a need for action of change. Co-create a culture of dialogue, learn and experiment. That's why we're called the lab. We are an ongoing experiment. Trust and respect the team's expertise, as well as sharing your expertise, perspectives, and your resources. Stay connected and build relationships. We do have attendance requirements because we do take this serious and we want you to be a part of something. We want you to co-create. We are building community. And in that, we let you know that our cohort, the Deal 10 cohort, does begin in January. There is mandatory orientation on January 8th and 9th from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Anytime that you feel that you may have to be absent, we just ask that you promptly communicate those absences or late arrivals or anything that may take you away from the cohort. We allow 3 absences during that fellowship year, and any 4th absence does result in a program dismissal.
Thank you, Sharnice. Our application process is competitive. We average about 20 to 22 fellows per cohort. We will not exceed 25. There are 13 questions on the application that are character limited to 750 characters. So what that means is we want to give you space to be thoughtful, but we also need you to be mindful, answer the questions honestly, and also demonstrate a wholehearted effort. I want to kind of reiterate what Ree began to talk about in terms of racial equity work and what that means at Deal, and also racial equity leadership. We have been asked this question a couple of times and wanted to provide some specific language around it. So our definition of racial equity work is really broad. We acknowledge that activism and movement work can look different for all of us. This work, very much like leadership, can occur out front, in the middle, and in the background. The Deal values all types of racial equity work, as you heard Ree say. It can be seen and unseen. It is all valuable. If you have meaningfully supported or participated in ending structural racism in any way, you have done racial equity work. We do not want you to downplay your experience. This application is an opportunity for you to reflect on, revisit, and share the work that you've done with us. Do not be shy or play small. Show up and let us know. In terms of racial equity leadership, we talked about how this opportunity is for both emerging and experienced leaders. And so emerging may mean someone who is early career or new or rising in their racial equity work or leadership. They may not have been in the trenches for decades, and that is okay and welcome as well. Your application we assess your application based on your responses rather than your years of experience. Leadership for us is not a title. It can be formal or informal. So you heard Sharnice talk about it can be a part of your profession, your work, your career that you're compensated for, or your leadership may show up in a volunteer capacity. Racial equity looks different across organizations and across individuals. I look at the folks who are joining us this afternoon, and I imagine that the way that you are impacting and helping to dismantle and disrupt structural racism in Detroit looks different for all of you. You are a leader to us if you have led all or a part of a project, process, program, or initiative, whether you have led that from out front, in the middle, or in the background. We consider that all to be leadership. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our selection process. So we assemble a jury to review applications. This jury includes the staff. It also includes some alumni, some of the folks who are on our design team, and they help us evaluate your application. We look at specifically 5 weighted questions that are in the application, as well as the overall application. And we use criteria to help us to do the evaluation and the scoring for those. I want to reiterate that we value both your career, your work experience, and your volunteer experience. Both of those are important. The deal staff will make the final decisions based on the evaluation criteria about who gets invited to the fellowship. And something new that we started 2 years ago, I believe, is that if you are not invited to join the Deal Fellowship, we will hold space for us to give you feedback about your application, going back to that we are a leadership development program. And so we want to help you strengthen your application for the future if you decide to reapply. What happens next is the application, as you all know, is opened. It opened last Friday. It will close on Tuesday, September 30th, specifically at 11:59 p.m. I implore you not to wait till the last minute. We can tell when you submit an application at the last minute because oftentimes those responses are rushed, not well thought out or articulated. All applicants will be notified on November 14th about their decision about their application. You will find out either way whether you are accepted or not. To repeat, the fellowship orientation will be Thursday, January 8th and Friday, January 9th. Both days are required. You cannot attend one or the other. You must be present for both. And the expectation is that you are there for both days all day. So we share this date in advance so that you know before you even decide to apply that this is a commitment that you are making. I also want to share that our fellowship sessions, we have some that are mandatory and some that are optional. The required sessions are held the second Thursday of every month. Most of those sessions, as Reed mentioned, are in person, and some of those, I think it's about 4 of those sessions are virtual. You would get, if you're invited to participate in the fellowship, you would get a calendar with an invitation to join Deal 10. We will culminate the Deal 10 experience on December 10th, which is also a Thursday next year. And that will be with a celebration to celebrate your accomplishment, what you've learned, what you've shared, what you've contributed to this fellowship experience. Next slide. And now we're gonna open up for questions. Feel free, I see there's a question already in the chat, but feel free to drop your question in the chat. And your question can be for us, or if you have questions for Jermaine or Janae, you can also unmute and ask your question or raise your hand if you'd like. I see Danny's question. If you know that you cannot attend the graduation, but can attend the orientation dates, is it still okay to apply? So yes, like we would love to have you at the graduation. But we also know, we acknowledge that that's for some people a busy time of the year, a holiday season. And so if you cannot attend the graduation in the evening, that is fine. However, I do want to note that same day, December 10th, is the last day of the fellowship session. So the evening is the graduation, but during the day is a fellowship session, and that would be the last session. That is a critical session. And I wonder if I can put Jermaine and Janae on the spot to talk just quickly about what you recall about Deal 8 in December, that last session, and some takeaways you had from that last session that we had. If you're comfortable, either of you.
I'm comfortable. I'll be brief, and then Jermaine, if you want to go. And sorry again for being off camera. My computer is doing what it does. So I would say during the last session, it was a really important time for like culminating or celebrating what we had all accomplished. It was a bonding experience. And not even just the graduation that night, but it truly was like a celebration throughout the entire day. And so, yeah, a lot of the things that we did was bonding with one another and just kind of spending that time to say, we just went through a journey, y'all. Like, how was this journey? And it was filled with a lot of gratitude.
Yeah, I'll say that. I'll be honest with y'all. I forgot until Janae just said this is until Janae just said something. Like I think about the different projects that we worked on. And also again, like for the most part, we was really genuinely happy for each other. Like I know some of that we had to do like closing projects and stuff like that, but for the most part, like I said, most of it was just celebration. I'm not even talking about the graduation. I'm talking about specifically just that last session. Like it was extremely like therapeutic, to be honest with you. I think some couple people cried. I think Janae cried. But we it definitely was like, it was like we, like you graduate from college or graduating from high school, and had a feeling that some bonds gonna be close together forever, and some of us maybe not see each other ever again. So it was definitely one of those type of experiences. It's definitely for our group. Like I said, everybody's group is different, but we call ourselves Deal Great for a reason, because the bonds that we did create. So on that point, you're gonna have to some big shoes to fill if you want to try to do what we do. But I appreciate it. We definitely had a good time.
I don't want to answer all the questions, so I'm gonna I will take the question from Ann Smith about, is there a monetary grant involved, and then if someone else, Ree or Sharnice, wants to address the childcare question.
Before you answer that question, Sharnice, can you go back a slide so that they can see the timeline for the application? Thank you.
Thanks, Sharnice. So I want to clarify, the that to participate in deal is free. So there's no cost to participate in the deal fellowship, and there is no compensation. So if you choose to apply, there is no funding or compensation that you receive, nor is there a fee to participate. Deal is, while we're housed at Wayne State University, specifically in the law school in the Damon J. Keefe Center for Civil Rights, we are a 100% grant funded program. And so we raise the money to do this work and do not have the resources to compensate folks or extend grants for your participation.
Okay. So could you please repeat the frequency of the meeting? So the sessions are, so it's a 12-month fellowship program. The sessions are every second Thursday, the mandatory sessions, every second Thursday with a couple of, I think it's the orientation, and 2 sessions are 2-day sessions. So there'll be a Thursday and a Friday, but it'll always be the second Thursday. If we have an optional session, it is the 4th Thursday of the month. But that's typically the cadence. Now, the mandatory sessions are hybrid, so some are in person, some are virtual. You will receive a calendar. You will receive actually 2 calendars. You'll receive a physical calendar that'll also be in a cohort Google folder, but you will also receive calendar invites from the deal account, and it will denote if the session is in person or virtual, and so you'll know that way in advance, because we hand out the calendar. So there was another question about childcare, if cohorts have organized childcare. No cohort has organized childcare. We do in the application ask about accessibility needs, and so childcare is one of the things that is listed. So we do ask that you let us know, and we try to find ways to accommodate. We have reimbursed childcare in the past. Are they always the same time on the second Thursdays? All in-person sessions are from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. All virtual sessions are from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. All optional sessions start at 10 a.m. because they're virtual, and they have varying end times depending on the presentation. We need to take it. Good question. So, Asante, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. Our hope would be, we know this is not the situation for everyone, but our hope is that if you are employed at an organization and your racial equity work is tied to your role, that your organization that you are at will support, first of all, that you would inform them that you have applied for and been accepted into the Deal Fellowship, and that they would be supportive of your participation in the fellowship and not require you to take a day off. As we have stated, this is leadership development, and we can provide additional documentation or support if that is necessary to engage with an organization to help them to understand the value of this opportunity, not just for you as an individual, but what you have the opportunity to bring and share with your colleagues at the organization. So our hope is that your participation would be sponsored and would not require you to take time off. And if there's some specific questions around that or nuances that a fellow or a prospective fellow might need help navigating, we're happy to do that. We're happy to have a conversation with employers. But if you are a volunteer, then yes, you would need to make a decision of whether or not you can make that commitment or have the bank of time available to take time off from work. But we just be clear, we will, if we can advocate, if you need us to help advocate for your participation so that it is not, you don't have to use your vacation time or whatever, we will happily do that. We have done that before and we will happily do that.
Did we catch everyone's question?
I have another question. So that's not necessarily my situation, but just I threw that question out there about the day off of work because not every situation is flexible. Um, I'll be very forthcoming honest. So my husband is waiting to hear if he will be listed for double lung transplant. Um, the decision is that will he get that transplant through Henry Ford, or will they refer him to John Hopkins in Maryland? And so this sounds like an amazing opportunity. It's right up the line of just even what I got my master's degree in. And so I definitely want to apply. But in the event that we have to relocate to Maryland, um, I would know that before. So what would that look like if, let's say I had to relocate, mid fellowship?
So that is a real life circumstance. And we would totally understand if you had to relocate. Because some sessions are in person, like you would likely miss those sessions. And it would, if it meant that you were relocating permanently or long term, then we would probably you would probably have to step away from the program, honestly. But if it was that you were relocating short term and coming back, we've also invited folks who had to step out for different reasons to step out and then join the following year as a fellow. Because life things have happened. We had a fellow who had to step away and take care of her brother. And she had to step away and hasn't been able to come back. So we will also be in communication about what life circumstances look like, and make a determination that fits with both of our, lived realities.
Okay, we are hoping to hear by probably when the application closes what our fate is, and it
Yeah.
would be for a year relocation. And so I mean, if I have to withdraw, if applied and accepted, then I would do that before trying to join anything if I'm already having to move. But thank you so much for responding.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
We encourage you to apply and then we see what happens.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't take yourself out of the opportunity.
No, for sure. I'm gonna apply and again, if we get noticed that before then, before all the notifications and things like that, I would communicate that for sure.
Okay. I also want to echo what Maite put in the chat, like sending good energy and all of that to you and your husband.
Any other questions? Does anyone have any questions for the alum? I'm also alum, but for Jermaine and Janae. I'm deal 3. I'm a little bit further back. It was a different experience back then.
I forgot to mention that, Ree, when I did the introductions. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Miss Ann Smith. Miss Connor, or Ms. Connor, I just wanted to see if there was an opportunity to hear any real life action from this activity, meaning significant change within maybe, I don't know, your workplace or at large. Have you seen the process of the equity action taking place in real life? And if you have, can you give a little scenario of it?
Yeah, I would say that is a question. Well, let me start by first stating that we have engaged an external evaluation partner, JFM Consulting, and they work with us to gather the impact of the fellowship experience, and have been working with us more recently over the past few years. So we do have some impact stories that are both videos that are available on our website. And you get to hear from Aisha. If you have an opportunity, can you drop a link to the YouTube channel or a couple of those stories in the chat? That would be helpful. So instead of me trying to recall what the impact has been, Ms. Smith, I would refer you to checking out those videos, because you get to hear from fellows directly about the impact that their experience in this fellowship has had, not just on them, but within their organization. So we've heard fellows talk about being better prepared and equipped to have conversations within their organizations and within their communities and families about racial equity, that because they have this expanded understanding, that they also have this language that helps them to either drive change, offer new ideas, and to problem solve and lean into their leadership with a different level of confidence. So we've heard different things from fellows about how the impact of their fellowship experience has happened. I think because racial equity and structural racism and systemic racism is so broad, that the impacts may not be, there's some that are seen and unseen, and they may not be on a grand scale. So I think it looks different for different fellows, and also what they walk away with is also different. We have learned that we talk about co-creation, and what fellows bring to the experience, how they show up, impacts also what they receive out of it. I often talk about the fellowship experience as a triad. So there's the fellow, there's the staff, and then there's the curriculum. And together we co-create and have this impact. One of the things that we are looking to do is deepen the work of the lab that Sharnice talked about, and create more opportunities in the future to do some different experimenting cross cohort and with this larger network. But we have not arrived at that point yet. But that is something that we aspire to do more of, that lab work.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm going to try to pull down my chat and get the links.
Okay.
I haven't been able to get to
Can I
them
say
yet.
something, Sunday?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question, Ms. Smith. Go ahead, Jermaine.
Yeah, I think, and also again, sometimes it's going to depend on your cohorts. It could be, I mean, as far as who you fellowship with. A lot of times, it's never like a lot of times with organizing or activism. Sometimes we just see things from a grand scale, and sometimes that can like really not diffuse, but it can be a situation where it can burn us out. Because we want things to be so big, but a lot of times when sometimes you got to start small to attack the infrastructure. And sometimes starting small is building up coalitions amongst one another and finding different ways to organize to attack specific things. And sometimes it's just being more tolerable with people. So I think once you get into it, you will see like how to maneuver a different way or understand a different way on how to attack and understand how the different things that's sent down to oppress a specific group of people, particular Black people, and you can find ways to organize amongst one another. So it is an opportunity to start small and build up something bigger.
To add to that too, I think it's something that I like to say a lot about Deal is that it's kind of like an organization for organizers. So essentially, like a lot of community organizers are doing like the daily work, responding to daily community needs, crises, things like that. And Deal is a space to bring community organizers together and support them in a way that they often don't get to have that support. And so, like Reed mentioned earlier, like working together to build this shared understanding and develop the skills and tools and then deepen the relationships. That's all happening in this year-long cohort in this space where most of the time, a lot of the people who are, racial equity fellows, they're working on things that it's high demand. There's a lot of stress in those situations. They don't have the space to reflect and build on that shared understanding together. And I think the other thing, like specifically about action, the caucus groups, like Jermaine, you were mentioning that, and I think Janae also mentioned it too, of like the fellows breaking into the racial affinity groups or the racial caucus groups to work together. That's another thing I think that's pretty unique that Deal does. And that's really where like the action for that takes place in the cohort happens, because the groups are taking what they've learned like throughout the fellowship year and applying that to projects and presentations like specific to their caucus group, and having that chance to work with other people within their racial caucus group is it's important, because there's things that you need to do within those with the people who you share that identity with, and then being able to present that out and share it out, which I think is a great resource that Deal is able to offer. And those projects are like recorded, and we share them out as resources and videos like on our website. But yeah, just keeping that in mind, that like Deal is essentially like an organization for organizers.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
I don't have any books off the top of my head. We do not, there is no prep work to get ready for the application, because you are speaking from your lived experience. And, again, like Asandi said, we think broadly about racial equity work. We think broadly about racial equity work and broadly about racial equity leadership. And so I think the best work to do to get ready to fill out your application is to take time and reflect about your own experience, and to reflect on where you've leaned into doing racial equity work, where you have done work to try to disrupt racial equity, and create any type of equitable alternative, and figuring out how you want to articulate that for the application. I think that's the best prep work that I can give you, but we don't have any book readings or anything to prepare. If you have any other questions, you can always email us at deal@wayne.edu. We will also have the info session available on our website, I believe, to rewatch. And if you have any other questions, you can also check out our website for the frequently asked questions to do a deeper dive. Thank you all so much for attending today. We hope that you complete an application, that you tell a friend, and we'll have another info session on September 3rd.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Have a good day, y'all. Peace.